Grand Hotel opened in 1847. It's been host to the military throughout history. You can uncover. During the Civil War, this area was a Confederate hospital. And during World War II, it served as a training facility for U.S. Army, Air Corps, and naval personnel on what they called Operation Ivory Soap. That's where the Navy was training the Army to understand the ways of the Navy, to understand the floors of deck and the walls of bulkheads, how to tell time by ship's bells, ship recognition, life-saving, swimming, beach assault, all the things that were necessary to safely convey U.S. Army Air Corps ground service personnel across the Pacific to set up air bases in places like Guadalcanal and Guam to fight against Japan. So throughout 1944 and 1945, the Grand Hotel was basically closed to the general public, and it was mainly Army and naval personnel here undergoing training. They trained over 5,000 troops here during World War II, so that was very significant. But like I said, this area was especially important because of being a Confederate hospital during the Civil War, and especially important because there are over 300 Confederate dead that are buried in the cemetery across the road. It's called Confederate Rest Cemetery. Those folks who did not survive their hospital stay here. Also, just south of here was fought the Battle of Mobile Bay, which is probably the largest naval engagement that's taken place in U.S. territorial waters. And you may remember from your history books, that's where Admiral Farragut said, "Damn, the torpedoes full speed ahead." Actually, it could have been more like, "Damn, the torpedoes full speed ahead." But either way, whether he was common or not, he was a very brave man and fought the Battle of Mobile Bay at 62 years of age. And in order to see above the smoke, he had to climb up in the rigging. He wasn't just a little bit up in the rigging, he was 58 feet above the deck. So he was definitely a professional Navy man from head to toe. The entrance to Mobile Bay, where the battle took place, is about 15 miles due south at this point. The entrance to the bay there is only 4 miles across. On the western side of that entrance is Fort Gaines on Dauphin Island. On the eastern side of that entrance is Fort Morgan on Mobile Point. Between those two forts were piling obstructions and torpedoes, or what we today call mines. Over 300 of them in 3 staggered rows. The only safe entrance into Mobile Bay at that particular time was right under the guns of Fort Morgan, within about 600 yards of its water batteries, which was point-blank range for the 10-inch Columbia guns that were there. On August 5th, 1864, Admiral Farragut, with 18 ships to the assault line, 4 of those ships being ironclad vessels. On that day, he steamed between those two forts to fight the Battle of Mobile Bay against the Confederate squadron of 4 ships, one of which was a very large ironclad vessel, the CSS Tennessee, Confederate vessel. One of the lead ships of the Union Navy, the USS Tecumseh, which was one of the ironclad ships, struck one of those torpedoes or mines and sank within a minute. So 93 of its sailors, as well as Captain Craven, are still on the bottom of the bay. When we celebrate freedom and honor our military, both past and present, we want to honor all the Confederate soldiers that are buried in the cemetery across the road. We also want to honor all the U.S. sailors who lost their lives aboard all the ships, especially those aboard the USS Tecumseh and those aboard the USS Osage, the Milwaukee, and the Rudolph that were sunk farther up the bay in the Blakely River Channel in the latter stages of the campaign against Mobile. They are all Americans. We are all Americans now under one flag. This flag is flown over Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, and Iraq. So we honor our military, our country, and ourselves every day when we do the Pledge of Allegiance. Also, are there any past or current military service personnel here? If so, please raise your hand. Thank you for your service. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, a lot of people died for that indivisible part during the Civil War. After they won the Battle of Mobile Bay, the Union Army and Navy laid siege to both of the forts. Fort Gaines only lasted one more day. It was already under siege when the Battle of Mobile Bay took place. Fort Morgan took 2 weeks of being shelled from the Gulf, from the bay, and by land. After they surrendered, the Union Army and Navy gathered men and materials throughout the balance of 1864. And in the spring of 1865, they started marking up the eastern shore. They brought troops up Fish River just east of here with troop transports. And the Union Navy kept pace with them this way, but only the shallow draft gunboats could make it up this far, since your average depth out there is 6 to 10 feet. So you get out to the ship channel, which wasn't there at that time. So in late March 1865, you had anchored right up here USS Metacomet, the Stockdale, the Albatross, the Janice, the Winnebago, the Cincinnati, and the Milwaukee. So with all those gunboats anchored here and the U.S. Army taking over this point as an observation post, this was a pretty prominent location on Mobile Bay for watching ship traffic. Now the gun we have in front of us is a model 1841 6-pounder. Now this type of gun was used extensively in the Mexican War and the Civil War. But by the end of the Civil War, this type of artillery piece was somewhat obsolete because it fired a relatively small exploding shell, 6 pounds, and it had been replaced by rifled artillery. This is a smoothbore piece. So this gun would shoot a 6-pound exploding shell 1,525 yards, and that's a few hundred yards short of a mile, at 5 degrees elevation with a 1.25-pound service charge of black powder. Now we're only going to shoot about a half-pound charge of black powder today, so that's less than half the original powder charge, plus we're not going to put a cannonball in front of it since the Coast Guard kind of frowns on me doing that. The canister round for this gun weighed over twice as much, 12.5 pounds. A canister round is a long can filled up with round ball bullets, just like a big shotgun shell. Each round of canister had about 340 bullets in it. A good crew on a gun like this could fire 3 rounds of canister a minute. So you're looking at 1,000 bullets coming out of this muzzle every minute. So even though this was somewhat obsolete, it was still being used, and they were very, very effective, especially at close range. There were 4 of these in Lumsden's Tuscaloosa Battery on the left of the Confederate line in Spanish Fort, which is the high ground that overlooks the interstate on the eastern shore. And there were 6 of these in Battery McDermott on the right of the Confederate line in Spanish Fort. First step in loading a gun like this is to make sure that the bore is clear. Warm it out, make sure there's no wine glasses or beer bottles or anything else in there. This is a priming pouch. It contains friction primer and vent prick. This is the gunner's haversack, which contains the round and the tools necessary for loading, firing, and cleaning the gun. When you ram the charge on a muzzle-loading artillery piece, you do it open-handed with your thumb beside the rammer shaft, stick the round against the breech, come out in one move. This is the lanyard. This is the vent prick, and that will pierce the powder charge, expose the powder to the fire of a friction primer. We use a Cannon friction primer just like the original. When I pull it, it will fire immediately. The command is to stand clear and fire. So we're going to say stand clear, count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and fire. At that point, you might want to cover your ears or your children's ears, because even though we're going to fire a half-pound charge, it's still pretty loud, especially if it's still and hot. The reason the command stand clear is given as part of the drill. If this gun wasn't bolted down and we were firing a heavy blank charge or a live round, this gun would recoil and it would run over you. God bless America. Stand clear. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire! Yeah, that's rock and roll. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. There's a lot of history that's taking place around the Grand Hotel. Thank you for coming to the Grand Hotel.
Oh, wow, you got it. Yeah, I didn't see that.
That was so cool. Did